Hi, everybody. Welcome to Global Tech Tales, where we talk with editors from around the world around the latest technology and leadership topics and hear stories from IT leaders about what they are looking for. I'm Keith Shaw, co hosting along with Matt Egan. He is the global content and editorial director at Foundry. He represents the UK. And this month, we are joined by Lucas Mirian. He is a senior writer at Computer World. He is in an undisclosed location. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, howdy.
All right. So this month, the topic is new thinking about cloud computing. It's a pretty big year for cloud, and basically costs and a lot of other things are affecting enterprise companies and basically how they're operating with cloud. So what we like to do when we start off the show, we do start off with a bunch of statistics. So just bear with me as I run through a lot of the stats about the current state of the market. So this was the from the IDC Cloud Pulse 2023 survey, which was the latest data that they had available, and they said close to half of cloud buyers spend more on the cloud than they expected in 2023, with 59% anticipating similar overruns in 2024. Obviously, the costs are basically just starting to go out of control. And we got another report, the Cloud Zero State of the Cloud Cost said 58% of companies feel that their cloud costs are too high, with 14% describing them as way too high, which was an 11% increase from 2022. And what's interesting is that 66% of them cannot accurately report unit costs, and 42% can only provide estimates when attributing cloud spend to different aspects of their businesses. But it's not just costs that are affected. The issue of data sovereignty. There was a Polaris report suggesting that the sovereign cloud market is projected to grow from 9.83 billion in 2025 to 102.7 billion by 2034. And again, this is driven by increasing regulatory requirements and the need for data control across several industries. And then even the AI PC space is growing immensely. The estimates are that approximately 48 million AI capable PCs were expected to ship globally, which accounted for 18% of total shipments. And by 2028, this is predicted to reach 205 million units. This was according to Canalys. And so we're seeing a lot of different market forces that are making IT leaders rethink the cloud, whether it's security, privacy, costs, and so much so that I think consultants are now saying to enterprise IT leaders, let's rethink this the whole all in on public cloud. So I wanted to ask, let's get Matt on and say, like, what is the state of the market from the IT leaders that you're talking with?
Yeah, no, thanks, Keith. I think in hitting all those different data points, you really addressed something, which is it's complex, right? And a question I like to ask successful IT leaders and maybe the unsuccessful ones too, is what do you now know not to be true that you used to believe, right? You often elicit quite interesting responses. And I was talking to the senior leader of a European-based global food and drink business a couple of weeks ago and asked him that question. He said he had always previously believed that fundamentally cloud would be more efficient, right? That in a globalized economy, pooling resources on infrastructure would always work out to be cheaper in the end. And he now no longer believes that, right? In part, that's due to economics and business. Cloud providers want to make money. So once vendors have you, they want to lock you in to a deal that's advantageous to them. And if cloud was always more efficient, FinOps wouldn't exist, right? But to be fair to those vendors and providers, the other issue is exactly what you hit on, and I'm really glad Lucas is here because this is something he's pretty expert in, right? It's the demands of AI. It's the demands of the modern workspace and infrastructure. CIOs, architects, they're building infrastructure for the AI ready organization. And that means some feel they need greater control over their compute, connectivity, storage. So they want to like repatriate and go to more kind of local on-prem, or to your point, AI PCs. So it's kind of at the edge. Although I think that's a use case that's for the future rather than for today. Um, other CIOs, IT leaders you speak to, they are signing up to long-term contracts with vendor groups because they're seeing an offer of the software vendor, the cloud vendor, the hardware provider coming together and saying we'll give you next gen technology in perpetuity, and that will allow you to develop your AI projects without having to worry about all the infrastructure. So they're going kind of more into that sort of cloud space. So I think when you throw in the complexities of managing data to support an AI ready organization, and all of the complexities of the modern world, to your point, Keith, particularly as geopolitics is kind of unstable around data sovereignty and all of those things. You can really see how cloud repatriations are happening. It's not about going all in on cloud, but also some other folks are saying, well, actually, our future does lie in that space. It's just more complex than it used to be, I think.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of why the cloud costs have gone up? It can't just be that the cloud vendors are trying to make more money or anything like that. There are a lot of reasons why the costs have gone up and maybe gone out of control. I think a lot of CFOs were spitting their coffee when they would get the bill on some of these things, right?
I think it's difficult to manage those costs. It's difficult to know where all the data storage is, well, where all the data is going. That's part of the problem. It's hard to monitor that. I think if there was like one word that comes to mind now, it's with CIOs, CTOs, CEOs, and other leaders. It's they're looking to optimize the cloud infrastructure. So they're looking to balance between on-prem and hybrid public cloud. So you got years of skyrocketing adoption, and now folks are kind of laser focused on optimizing the spend, cutting waste, getting resources to the right size, leveraging things like spot pricing, where you can buy the extra or spare compute capacity at massively discounted rates compared to regular on-demand prices. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they have a lot of unused server capacity and they want used at any given time. But the catch, of course, is that the cloud provider can reclaim that or interrupt the service and capacity at any time with little or no notice when they need it back. So it's not entirely reliable, but I think the more proactive IT teams are also looking at hybrid multi-cloud optimization, create more efficient workloads across multiple clouds and on-premise systems. So basically, get the best mix of performance, compliance, and cost. And automation and AI-driven tools are also making this a lot easier. They're being adopted to optimize cloud operations from monitoring to scaling and to security. So you got services like Cloud Health by VMware. I think it offers a multi-cloud cost management with AI-driven recommendations. That's a big one. You're going to get a lot of AI-driven recommendations because it now can look at your usage of cloud and recommend where you can make cuts, where can you optimize that. AWS offers something called Cost Explorer Plus, I think it is, that offers AI-driven right-sizing suggestions for its own services, AWS's own services. Google Cloud Recommender, that is AI to suggest cost-saving optimizations. And then NetApp has Spot IO, that uses AI to optimize workloads as well in
Right.
spot instances, like I was just talking about in reserved capacity.
Right. So Lucas, nobody's actually saying you're not hearing for anybody saying we're going to take all of our stuff from the cloud and move it back to on-prem. Maybe with the exception of AI, maybe some AI workloads, because I think this optimization thing is dead on. Like that's people want to know where they're spending on it, why it's going up, and then if they can optimize it to save money. I don't think anybody is saying right now, "Oh, let's just bring everything back." But maybe except with the exception of some AI workloads. Matt?
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that characterization. I was really interested to hear what Lucas was saying. Are people looking to save? Are people looking to move from the cloud? The answer is yes, but it's all in the context of a bigger picture. And this is a time of great change, right? Every organization is seeking to be more data driven and to apply generative and particularly agentic AI inside to drive efficiency and outside to generate new products and services. And underpinning all of this, we've talked about this so many times, Keith, right? Is the need to have infrastructure that is both effective and efficient today, but also able to scale with the organization's AI strategy that may not be fully fleshed out. So the old days of chucking everything in the cloud and managing costs is becoming outmoded, I think, right? Cost is a driver, definitely, but so is scalability, so is the ability to accelerate and grow, and capability is a big part of it, right? And as Lucas so beautifully articulated, there are so many different options and opportunities here that is where the IT leaders, not just the CIOs, but definitely architects, are having to think through like their whole infrastructure and the part of cloud in it.
Right. I think one of the clues that we were starting to hear about FinOps and the trying to reduce the costs were the number of companies that were pitching me for the demo show.
Yeah,
Of their first pitch was cloud spending is out of control, and CFOs are freaking out about all this, and a lot of the CIOs and IT leaders were like, we have no idea where these increased costs are coming, which is like visibility on your spend. And that was a big growth pitch for demo companies. So there's a lot of companies out there. We had a few on the show, definitely. So Matt, you brought up agentic AI. It feels like we can't get around an episode of this show without talking about agentic AI. Is that something that's going to help the situation in the cloud? These AI agents, when they're performing their workflows, are going to probably need to go out on the cloud. So you better have your house in order before you start doing agentic too, right?
definitely. And like I say, I would fold this into, and I really want to hear from Lucas on this, but I would fold this into the overall infrastructure around which your organization's built, right? And if you think about it from the vendor side, right? This is a huge times of change are times of opportunity and threat, right? If you're a vendor, the opportunity is to build long-term partners with organizations as they develop their AI strategies, offering future-proofed AI capabilities, technology that's evolving the partnership, basically saying to IT leaders, we can kind of outsource your architecture and we can provide it for you. And we've definitely seen some vendors see success in this space, particularly when they group together, like I said earlier, um, the cloud provision with the front end software and the hardware itself, right? And we've seen vendors group together offer these deals because they can almost guarantee long term partnerships with the clients who go all in there. And that's a pretty good deal for the right sort of organization because, to the point you both made, if you can predict costs and if you can manage costs over the future, that's a really valuable thing. The threat from a vendor perspective is, again, it's a time of churn. So we are seeing increased cloud repatriation. We are seeing organizations taking that architecture much more in house and building their own future proofed infrastructure from the various different elements that we've described: cloud, on prem, some kind of hybrid, even at the edge. And that's the whole AIPC promise, which, again, I don't think is fully fleshed out at this point, but is definitely going to be part of the solutions. And so you're also seeing organizations just wanting to keep their options open, right? Like that can be a strength as well to say, okay, we're using cloud, we're happy with the way we're using it, but we're not committed for the long term. And it is driven by that AI, because, of course, the hidden piece about AI is it requires enormous amounts of compute capability. And that's not always recognized on the business side of the house, which is where some of this kind of confusion around cloud happens, I think.
Yeah. So let's assume then that a company maybe can get a handle on the issue around costs and optimizations, but that's not the only reason that they might want to relook at their cloud spend. Correct. In addition to that, you've also got the data sovereignty issue and security and privacy. I think a lot of people that are talking about moving back to the cloud or moving into a different situation than all in on public is because of those two issues. Lucas, are you hearing more about the data sovereignty issue, or is it more about companies want to keep some of their AI workloads maybe private because they're worried about leakage or agents or things like that getting out there?
I think it's both. It's a little bit of both. But right now, as far as regulatory requirements, it's up in the air. You've got President Trump trying to nix state regulations that are already in place. But at the same time, a lot of these corporations, the CIOs, CTOs, CEOs whom we talk with, are multinational, and so they have to deal with things like the EU's AI regulation,
Yep.
G, um, um, I'm sorry, just went out of my head. Um, GDPR,
Right.
and then and I was talking about the state regulations, the California Consumer Privacy Act, which is I don't think that President Trump is going to be successful in putting a ban on state regulations. It's not constitutionally capable, but so they're still going to have to deal with that. Yeah, sovereignty solves part of that problem, keeping it within U.S. borders. But like I said, most companies are multinational, so they still have to deal with that. How do you separate the two? We talked with a CIO over at St. Jude's Hospital in Memphis, and one of the things he did was he was looking at how they're using public cloud, And they were basically using a public cloud for everybody within the organization. And he said, well, we don't really need to do that. So what they started to do was they were using um, uh, cloud for researchers who weren't part of their internal organization, which they use a lot of third party researchers. And then
Right.
they're using on prem supercomputers for the researchers who needed the data close to the supercomputer for the faster results. And that cut their costs. Basically, they're managing the transfer between clouds. So he just looked at the data, where it was, who was using it, and how it was being transferred. And that's one way they can cut the costs. And I'm not sure if this was part of the conversation you wanted to have, but cloud providers are also embedding generative AI and agentic AI into their platforms. And that's going to make it easier and faster and more secure to adopt. It also keeps cloud providers more relevant as this competition continues to increase, with AI being a priority among IT and business leaders.
Yeah.
So you got stuff like Azure OpenAI Secure service, which integrates AI, OpenAI's LLMs, large language models like GPT, and then Codex and DALI. That's right into Microsoft Azure's ecosystem. You've got AWS's Code Whisperer. That's a big one right now. Is Jive Coding? I love that name.
I thought it was you mean vibe coding, right? Not jive.
I call it Jive Coding, but Vibe Coding, yeah. It's sort of like
That's o
it's
that's
sort of
okay.
Saturday Night Fever thing, you know.
There you go. There you go.
But but the
You're
great
you're you're the first guest that has mentioned Saturday Night Fever, I think. So, you
That's
get
first.
bonus points for that one.
but the
Yeah.
cool thing about it is that, and folks are predicting that within 5 years, AI is going to be producing 90% of code, and that doesn't mean it's going to get rid of developers or engineers. What it's going to do is going to offer them more ability to be creative. So it's going to take care of the base code. But the other thing it's going to do is going to allow business people to get involved in coding. So
Yeah.
use natural language processing to do this. That's all part of cloud services. So stuff like AWS's Code Whisperer, that's an AI powered code generation tool to help developers and business leaders. So if they get an idea for an application, they don't necessarily have to go to the developer team to get it done. They're going to learn how to do it themselves.
You brought up a lot of different issues, Lucas, around that. Like, again, not just the data sovereignty, because we've had guests on the show before, especially from India and some of the Southeast Asia areas. They are really big on in the Middle East as well. That was a data sovereignty issue. But when you bring up the coding part of it too, there's a lot of companies that don't want their code out in the cloud, and that brings up the security issue. So maybe instead we keep all of our coding, being done, and all of the AI coding being done on premises or even on an AI PC. I know we've done a bunch of demo episodes with people that were showing off the AI PCs and the chips. And that was one of their big selling points, was like, there's a lot of companies out there that don't want a lot of that stuff leaked. So, um, you know, excellent points on all of those. So what are you hearing from the security side of things too?
So I would like just rolling back a little bit on that, because I think this is a really important issue, and Lucas hit on this when he talked about organizations, the hospital you spoke to, like looking at the use of data, and Keith, in this instance, we can include development and coding in that, right? And creating a British idiom, but a horses for courses, creating a for each use case, like what do we want to be, on prem, cloud, and within the cloud, right? We can have a cloud that is sovereign to one particular nation or one particular task. Industry specific clouds, region specific clouds, like that can be critical if we're building infrastructure in that way. So it's about architecting the right solutions for the right tasks, even within an organization, right? We're talking actually then about kind of a level of discipline around data and usage. But I do also think, from a security perspective, I attended an event recently in which the CIO of a large enterprise was talking about how, in their view, confidential computing had to become table stakes for their organization to remain in the cloud, right? Again, same sort of thing, like the use cases they were talking about had to be completely sandboxed in order for it to be viable for them. So for them, data security and their customers and the trust that comes with it was just the start. Because there is, as we've covered, there's regulatory compliance, but that organization wants to be able to work in collaboration with suppliers and partnerships on AI projects and development projects, but it needs to be able to process data, and it needs to be able to do creative activities, IP related activities like development in a completely encrypted and anonymous way whilst also being collaborative, right? So that can mean on-prem, but it can also mean, to Lucas's point, the vendors getting really smart about the cloud services they offer in a way that they are kind of sandboxed, in a way that you can be really confident that you're utilizing cloud capability and technology, but doing it in a way that is completely private to you and your organization.
Yeah, that's a great point. I keep always in my head when I start thinking about cloud, I'm always assuming public cloud versus on-prem, which is then private. But you could do private clouds, so I always keep forgetting about the private cloud option. So there's companies that could still have a cloud infrastructure, but it's all completely private.
Right, and the vendors are savvy to this, right? Lucas was talking about it, so I shouldn't talk over him, but the vendors are getting savvy to this because that in many cases, that is a key selling point for an organization to be able to use the cloud.
So, right sizing, we want to talk about this as well. We talked to a CTO at the Reinsurance Group of America, RGA, and he's working on right sizing his company's public cloud footprint by looking at processes around workload intake and distribution criteria and implementation practices across the private and public cloud. And what he's saying is expense optimization, defining workload selection criteria is going to determine which things go to the public cloud and which things go to the private cloud. Because, as you know, vendors charge not just for ingest, but also egress fees for data leaving premises as well. So they're trying to manage their daily life cycle of the data and minimize transfer between clouds because you're charged for both. So that's something to look at, and you have to look at between availability zones, regions, and clouds because you're charged for when you leave a availability zone. You're charged extra for that as well. So again, they're looking at those things that Matt was just talking about in terms of sovereignty and transfers between different zones and how much more it's going to cost. These are all playing into how they determine whether to use public and private cloud. As far as PCs, AI PCs, those are a very real thing. There are a lot of data out there that's showing its adoption rates right now. Well, put it this way: so shipments alone this year are going to be about 40% of all PCs.
That's an amazing number. Like
Yeah.
do you even does that feel right to you? Or is it just because I have a Mac and I never really follow the PC market space?
Oh, I think it is because I think the companies are getting ahead of the curve, especially with
Yeah.
the chips, the AI chips that are coming out now. That's going to dominate the industries by 2028. AI PCs could account for 80% of the PC market. We're talking 600 million computers over the next 4 years, and that is part of this is because of their concern about privacy.
I mean, it's also the natural refresh cycle for a lot of computers too, and plus, like with Microsoft too,
Yeah.
they're sunsetting Windows 10, right?
Oh,
So I think they're gonna. I think most companies, probably within 5 years, you're gonna have an AI PC at
well,
some point.
I think so. I'm going to throw an element of skepticism because I'm not disputing anything Lucas said, but I think one of the drivers behind it is exactly what you're just talking about, Keith. And we're talking about shipments here, which is like the hardware vendors are definitely driving this cycle. Of course they are because they've got a differentiation opportunity. They're able to say that
Right.
hardware you've got you now it's out of date because it's not an AI PC. The technology is growing amazingly, and that's tied to the Windows 10 retirement piece. Is like the intention here is. I used to edit a PC magazine many years ago, and we were so happy whenever a new Windows came out, right? Because we knew we would desktop PCs to people, and it's that kind of a vibe that, from a marketing perspective, I think the hardware vendors are going for. There is no doubt that, to Lucas's point, those AI PCs at the edge are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting around this compute. They're going to bring great scalability to the ability to do things, privacy, like clearly beyond compare from the cloud perspective. I just personally, from talking to analysts and IT leaders, I'm not hearing of many actual use cases where it's happening now in real time. Maybe I'm speaking to the wrong people, right? Because it definitely that modular scalability, that increased security, definitely as a use case, it's really exciting to have it. Um, I still believe, to be honest with you, that yes, I think as organizations refresh their PC stock, they're going to go to AI PCs. It's going to be the right thing to do. In part, it's going to be driven by the fact that that's the only option they've got, right? Because they're not being sold
Right.
anything else. Um, but I also still believe that cloud will be part of the solution, right? They'll be
Right.
one that, oh,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. At the edge, if you can put in your hands of your end users the capability to do AI immediately right there, but there's still going to be a connective tissue in the infrastructure, and that's still going to be a mixture of cloud and on-prem. That's just my understanding.
You mentioned in the earlier part of the show, Matt, that you were a little bit skeptical about the growth of the AI PC market, and again, you hit the nail on the head with this is being pushed by the hardware vendors, not just the computer makers, but also the chip makers too. And again, we've done some demo episodes where we've gotten some demonstrations of the AI PCs from I think we did Lenovo, Qualcomm, Dell. There's a whole bunch of people out there that did some demos with us. Um, what are the reasons that you think that why are you being so skeptical? And if you don't have an answer, I do have one on my own. If
Yeah.
you want to just
No, my
toss it back to
it's
me.
purely based on speaking to IT decision makers, to IT leaders. Like, is
Yeah.
they all see it as a potential. Actually, I was speaking to an analyst recently at an event whose job is to coach and work with IT leaders, and he was saying it's happening and it's coming. Just like right now, very few IT leaders are seeing immediate kind of return on investment on AI PCs. But to be fair, Lucas's point was it's about future proofing, right? And so that is definitely a viable thing because I think if you are expecting AI to be baked into everything you do, it definitely makes sense for the end users to have the devices. I suppose my skepticism, such as it is based around the fact that it is being driven by the hardware manufacturers, obviously, right? Because they really want people to like with we did another demo episode recently about using a cloud-based operating system to give another 10 years to hardware, right? It is with modern hardware, it is completely conceivable that you can keep it running for a long period of time if you're just doing basic computational tasks. I think most organizations are going to be doing more than just basic computational tasks, but that is the kind of balance that IT decision makers have to make. So yeah, I'm not skeptical on the concept of AI PCs. I think it's super exciting. I'm just not seeing the use cases right here, right now. But that's based on speaking to IT decision makers. I'm interested, Keith,
Right.
your skepticism. Where's your skepticism?
Well, I'm gonna throw it to Lucas to see if he wants to slam down the basketball right now, or if you want to pass it back to me.
Talking about hardware vendors, but let's not forget that folks like Microsoft is really pushing the AI PC concept. I mean, 365, and all the AI features that they have in there, they're telling you that your computers are going to need these neural processing units in order to function with these features. So they're pushing it pretty hard too because they see the future of AI as well. They were all on board. Remember, they were like 49% of OpenAI, so they dove in right from the beginning, even before 2022 when, or it was 23 that ChatGPT came on board.
Late
Uh,
2022,
yeah,
yeah.
20, yeah, late 20 October, yeah, I think it was November. They've been in on this from the get go, and they see this as the future. So the software vendors are pushing this hard too, because it's all going to be part of the software, and they're going to tell you you're not going to be able to access these features, or they're not going to function efficiently without an AI PC. The other thing you're going to see is a lot of IoT devices running these AI chips for the same reasons. Automation. A lot of things are going to be automated, and we could talk about future of work there as well if you like to. But yeah, so a lot of the devices for security reasons are going to use AI on prem, but at the same time, if your staff, if your workforce is not educated on how to use these devices, you're right. You're not going to see a return on investment. And right now, folks are still trying to figure out exactly where the ROI is with AI. That's so hard to say. Where the ROI is with AI. Too
All
many.
right, Lucas, you're really close, but you didn't have the answer that I had.
Oh,
There's oh, you want to hear what
sure.
my thought is and my gut? There's no apps yet.
Yeah.
The software is not there yet. I know Microsoft has been doing a lot. They spent a lot of money. They're throwing everything at the wall. They're throwing the paws at the wall, see what sticks. The demonstrations that I've seen, they look really good, but they're not completely. They're not there yet. Once people start seeing that there might be a killer app usage for doing an AI PC, rather than just going to the cloud and using all of the AI services. This is just from the end user side too that I'm seeing. Until you start seeing those apps with doing this on the PC without needing a network connection, then I think they'll start to take off. And then one thing that I didn't mention was the battery life on the AI PCs. Maybe if you've got end users that really just don't want to carry around that charger anymore, or the power pack, or try to fight at the airport for that last plug in the seating area. Once you see a 12-hour battery life, that actually is a 12-hour battery life. Because again, someone told me during one of my travels was like, yeah, battery life is great until then Microsoft gets involved and then they stack all of their apps on it, and then all of a sudden you go from 12 hours to like 3. So again, maybe that's just my Microsoft
Well,
bias showing.
so I'll do a mic drop moment here for a second. Let's just face it, most workers are using chatbots. I mean, everybody's playing with chatbots right now, and you're not seeing a real. I just wrote an article about this. A study showed that they're not finding an ROI. They're not even seeing a lot of productivity gains. There's some efficiencies happening, but they're not using the additional time that they're getting from this to do additional work.
I think you and I need to do this on another Today in Tech show, because I have a story about how I tried to actually get a work process done through AI and ChatGPT, and I spent more time trying to get the AI to do what I wanted it to than what my original goal should have been.
Honestly,
So that's an issue for
and that'll
another show.
probably change, and that's definitely the point we're in now. There's a really
Yeah,
interesting, again, I was talking to an analyst about this recently, about research with developers that shows it has proven possible to this point to show like an increase in productivity from using like coding, AI driven coding. And yet you speak to individual developers, they're all like, oh, it's brilliant. It makes me do more, right? Because it is taking away toil. It is removing in the same. There's a brilliant article on InfoWorld recently about the rise and fall of Stack Overflow, and I remember my roommate at college. He was a developer. He is a developer, and this was in the dim and distant pre-internet age. Like when he was learning coding, he was still copying and pasting from other people, right? Because that's how it worked. And AI has definitely sped up that element whereby you don't have to write everything from scratch. And he will tell you, yeah, absolutely, like ChatGPT, whatever, all these tools, they're really helping me be more efficient. But are we seeing the return on investment on the outside of it? I don't know. There's less toil. Maybe there's more creativity. I don't know. But we'll definitely get there for sure. Those killer use cases will come. But I, in my working life, and I'm using these things all the time, I don't see those killer use cases at this point. But I'm sure they will come.
all right. I got one more. I got one more question to ask, or one more topic around the world of cloud, just to get us back to cloud for a second. A lot of the discussions with cloud computing was around the idea of being a green cloud and sustainability and all of that kind of stuff. Has that just gone away? Basically because AI came around, and the power requirements for AI. Um, it's very, very hard to be a green data center, or a green cloud provider, if you've got all of these other requests. Is that one of those things where money took over, and or are you still seeing a lot of these efforts, or is that a hot potato? Should we not even bring up the sustainability part of it?
I go back to Iron Man and Tony Stark.
No, 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 please explain.
Well, I mean, they're looking at the so I can't remember the protagonist, and the antagonist in that, what his name was, but they go into the center where they have a fusion uh, uh, a fusion generator, and he looks at it, and he points at that and he goes, "We just made that to please the environmentalists. You know that. It doesn't. It was efficient. It was never cost effective." And it sort of feels like that a little bit. Like we just did that to please the people who thought AI was the next big thing. I don't think it's that exactly, but right now they're still rolling out in small measure. So is everybody rolling this out? Yes, in some form. There's a lot of fear of missing out there. But is it really giving it, are they rolling it out widely within the organization? No, they're not. So they have small, every company, like 80% of companies more, they're rolling it out, but not 80% within the company, if that makes sense to you. So there's small instances of it. They're testing of it, and they're all different types of uh, of of, chatbots and agents that they're rolling out. But again, small instances. They're not seeing the ROI yet. They're still testing it. They don't want to know what to make of this. We're going to see efficiencies. It's going to happen, especially in the cloud, because AI has those monitoring capabilities. It has the capabilities to look at data, well, once we get past the errors and the hallucinations.
So Matt, this may be our U.S. bias showing through, where Lucas and I roll our eyes when it comes to a lot of the sustainability. You're in the UK. Are they trying to take green cloud computing more seriously?
I don't think this is a geographical difference, but I do think there's potentially even a generational difference, and I think sustainability has always been the hidden cost of computing and connected computing, right? Like think about receiving an email from someone that says at the bottom, "Please don't print this email," right? As if hosting, as if
Sorry.
hosting that information in the cloud takes no energy, right? Like it's madness. But that's how we were kind of trained to think. And there's no doubt that financial cost is most top of mind when IT leaders talk about driving efficiency and talk about efficiency through the cloud. That's also at the root of a lot of talk, that and security are at the root of a lot of talk about moving to the edge and using AI infused end user devices. But I do expect sustainability to become increasingly important factor in cloud and in infrastructure in general. Partly that's to do with cost savings. Partly, I think geopolitical instability is like a big factor in that, right? We've all got used to in our lifetimes just being completely comfortable with where our energy is coming from and that it's sustainable. That may not be the case like forever, right? I think the cost of energy. I mean, a big driver in the UK. You asked about the UK, like like between the Ukraine conflict, UK leaving the EU, like energy prices at household level in this country have spiraled over the past few years, and that really changes people's behavior, right? Like when you are worried about paying your next month's gas and electricity bill, like people start to act in a much more sustainable way. And I think the interesting thing with AI is like if it does, I mean, Lucas is exactly right with the statement with the situation today, but like if it does drive extreme need for more computational power, I think, yes, you'll see people looking for more sustainability. I also think there's a whole other conversation around compute itself. Quantum's part of this. Like, my 10-year-old came home from school telling her that her teacher had told her that the future was quantum computing and that was going to be great because you wouldn't need the same battery capacity and you wouldn't need the same power to drive the computer. I don't know if that is the case, right? But that's definitely the vision for like future state computing. So yeah, I think overall, I think sustainability is something that people pay lip service to. Like what they really care about is cost efficiency. But I do expect sustainability to become a much bigger issue in the near to midterm future.
All
Can I,
right, we need
add
to.
one
Oh,
thing to
oh,
that?
you got one more. All right. Go ahead, really quick.
Okay, we're going from large language models. They're still going to be used out there, but we're going to smaller language models.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent point.
Fewer parameters, less compute necessary, more efficient, more targeted yeah.
Industry specific LLMs will be a lot less expensive to run, right? Yeah, yeah. Excellent point. All right, so I want to get to the end of show vote. This is where we usually do a yes no answer, but everyone usually creeps in a depends. All right, so out of all of these different goals and trends, which will be the biggest mover for companies during the rest of 2025 and going into 2026? So, biggest issue around cloud, will it be cloud spending, data sovereignty, security, sustainability, or edge and AI PCs? I'm going to go first because it's the easiest answer. I think it's cloud spending. I think we're at that point where everyone needs to get their house in order. So I'm going to go with cloud spend. If you are allowed to pick whatever you want.
I mean, spending is one. I had it as AI adoption. It's an enormous increase in attack surfaces, especially with AI PCs, edge devices becoming widespread. Companies are facing new types of cyber threats linked to AI powered systems and cloud integrations. You've got new regulations related to AI. Even if President Trump is trying to ban them, you still have, like I said earlier, state regs, other nations implementing things like EU AI Act, GDPR. Those regulations, they're just unacceptable risks, such as real time remote facial recognition. We're already seeing that. Social scoring systems, we're already seeing that. Systems targeting vulnerable groups. And the costs and risk associated with data breaches through AI model exploitation. So I could go on and on, but yeah, I think it's AI combined with cost.
All right, and Matt.
Well,
You need to go over the list again.
you know, my answer is always all of the above. But actually, the way the way Lucas framed it,
One of these days, I'm going to get you to commit to a yes
I,
or no
I'm
answer.
going to commit, but I'm going to commit to an all of the above kind of answer, right? Which is,
Okay.
I don't disagree with Lucas, but I think to me it's about the future state of each organization, and like when they're thinking about cloud, it's not in isolation. They're thinking about their infrastructure, and I mean storage, compute, connectivity, and the security around that, right? And it's about what is our organization going to be in future, and that's what AI is driving. So I think it is about AI adoption, to use Lucas's term, but I think from a specifically cloud perspective, it is what is our organization going to look like in say 5 years time? What do we need our infrastructure to be? And that is driving real change, like more than we've seen for quite a long period of time.
All right. Thank you guys. I know that we only had 3 guests on this show this week, but we're still at that 41, 42 minute mark. So again, thanks for joining us on the show. And again, great topic. So we're going to be back next month with more global editors to talk about how AI is changing the data center, which is basically the turn it around from cloud to data center. So that's all the time we have for the shows today. Feel free to add any comments you have below. Be sure to check out our other Tech Talk shows such as Today in Tech, CIO Leadership Live, and Demo if you are interested in seeing B2B product demonstrations. I'm Keith Shaw again. Matt, thanks again. Lucas, thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.